All right, jumping right into it. Today, we're going to be tackling Periyar E.V. Ramaswamy's perspective on why Brahmins opposed reservation policies in India. And we've got a whole bunch of his writings and speeches, and some of his arguments are so sharp, they feel super relevant today.
Yeah, and it's fascinating that he doesn't just state his opinions. He
Mm.
really breaks it down. He was such a proponent for lower caste upliftment and saw reservation as a crucial tool for social justice.
Yeah, and to understand his viewpoint, you kind of have to remember when he was writing this stuff, this was the mid-20th century, massive social upheaval in India. The idea of an independent India was taking shape. And he was right there challenging those power structures.
Especially the caste system.
Exactly. So he believed that communal representation is a basic right for everyone. And by that, he means where all communities have a genuine voice in government and society.
It's not a favor.
Not a favor.
Right?
So not just representation in, say, the legislature, but across the board.
Precisely across the board. And what's interesting is that he believed that once all communities were on a truly level playing field, then this need for communal representation would naturally fade away.
So as a means to an end.
Exactly.
Not the end goal itself.
Yeah, but here's where things get a little sticky and controversial, because he didn't shy away from calling out the resistance he saw to this idea of communal representation.
Okay.
He found the opposition from Brahmins, particularly those in Tamil Nadu, kind of suspicious. He felt their resistance lacked clear justification, and he actually mentions this in some of his writing, saying they seem to actively create roadblocks against implementing this policy.
What did he make of that?
Well, he found it suspicious. He felt like there was a lack of clear justification, and I can even quote here. He said, "The Brahmins, particularly the Brahmins of Tamil Nadu, stooped to many ways to put hurdles and create obstacles against the implementation of the policy of communal representation." He felt like there were deeper reasons behind their stance.
So he's saying, like, if you're so against uplifting the downtrodden, what's the real reason?
Exactly.
What are you not saying out loud?
Yeah, he's kind of calling them out, like daring them to have an open and honest conversation about their motives. And this is where his critique of Brahminical power really takes shape.
Yeah.
He saw them as benefiting from the status quo and therefore resistant to any change that might threaten that position.
So we're starting to see why he dives into this topic in the first place.
Hmm?
He's not just making a general observation about reservation. He's specifically looking at why this particular community might be opposed to it.
Right. And from there, he tackles another big argument against reservation head-on, the whole merit and efficiency debate.
Oh, yeah.
This idea that reservation undermines quality because it allows less qualified people into positions they don't deserve.
And I bet Periyar had something to say about that. He doesn't seem like one to let that kind of argument slide.
Absolutely not. He rips this argument apart by questioning how you can fairly evaluate merit when access to education and opportunities has been historically unequal.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't had the same opportunities as somebody else, how can you be judged by the same standards?
Yes, exactly. He even pointed to specific examples of this. Students who pass their qualifying exams, but then they're subjected to additional tests for college admissions.
So they've already proven they're capable.
Yeah.
But they face yet another hurdle.
Exactly. It's like, why are we making people jump through so many hoops? And Periyar called this out. He said, "What are the benefits we have gained by the ministries composed of men with merit and efficiency? Is there anything to be proud of? Think over. Similarly, what have we lost by the rule of those who are said to be inefficient and beneath the standard?" He's really challenging the very definition of merit here.
Yeah, it's not just about test scores. It's about recognizing that the playing field isn't level to begin with.
Absolutely. And this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh,
He goes even deeper into dismantling this whole meritocracy argument.
you've got me intrigued. I'm ready to hear more. Where does he go from here?
He argues that this whole focus on high exam scores as the only measure of worth actually harms real learning and progress. Constantly chasing those top marks creates a system where students just cram and memorize.
Right.
Instead of truly understanding and thinking critically.
Oh, so it stifles, like, genuine intellectual growth.
Yes, exactly.
I could see how that could be a problem. It's like those discussions we have today about standardized testing.
Right.
Does it really measure intelligence or just the ability to take a test well?
Exactly. And Periyar was raising these same concerns decades ago.
Wow.
He envisioned an education system that fostered curiosity, creativity, and a genuine love of learning.
Right.
Not just the ability to ace exams.
That makes me wonder if focusing solely on merit and efficiency is flawed, as Periyar argues. What did he propose as an alternative?
Well, he emphasized the crucial role of equitable representation, especially in government services. He believed that in a diverse country like India, ensuring all communities have a voice in government is absolutely essential for social justice. And remember, this is post-independence India,
Yeah.
a nation trying to forge its own identity after centuries of colonial rule.
So it wasn't just about fairness for Periyar, it was about building a new India where everyone had a stake in the system.
Exactly. He believed that when one community holds a disproportionate amount of power, in this case, the Brahmin community,
Hmm.
it creates a system that's inherently biased against others. He saw it as a continuation of the power dynamics established during British rule.
He doesn't hold back, does he?
Mm.
He uses pretty strong language here, calling it a Brahmin monopoly in government, especially in those high-paying positions.
He does, and it's important to remember the historical context here. Periyar was directly challenging the legacy of colonialism. He argued that the British leaving didn't magically erase those structures of power and privilege that they had created.
Right, so that raises the question, who gets to inherit the reins of power in a newly independent nation?
That's the question he was pushing people to confront. Was the struggle for freedom simply meant to transfer power from British hands to a select few within Indian society? He felt that true freedom meant empowering all communities to participate fully in governing their nation.
So for him, genuine independence wasn't just about kicking out the British, it was about dismantling those internal systems of oppression that were deeply rooted in Indian society itself.
Absolutely. And that's where his critique of Brahmin opposition to reservation comes full circle. He saw their resistance as a way of holding on to that privileged position.
He even uses a very striking analogy to drive home this point, comparing Brahmins who oppose reservation to robbers who protest after being caught and forced to return stolen goods.
It's a powerful image that reflects his deep sense of injustice. He was frustrated by the reluctance to share power and resources more equitably.
Yeah, and he also argues that if government jobs were just about salaries and nothing more, then maybe the opposition to reservation wouldn't be so fierce. But he saw it differently.
Right. He recognized that government positions, even seemingly minor ones, come with power and influence, which could be used to favor one's own community. It's human nature to a certain extent to look out for those you identify with.
But Periyar is saying if that power is concentrated in the hands of a few, it inevitably leads to a system that benefits those in power at the expense of others.
Exactly. And his solution was to ensure that power is distributed more widely across all communities. This way, he argued, everyone has a stake in the system and the ability to advocate for their own needs and interests. It wasn't just about individual gain, it was about creating a more just and equitable society as a whole.
This all sounds very idealistic, but how practical was Periyar's vision? Was he just a visionary thinker, or did he offer concrete solutions for achieving this kind of radical societal transformation?
That's a question worth exploring further. Perrier wasn't just an armchair philosopher. He was a social activist who dedicated his life to challenging the status quo and advocating for the rights of the marginalized.
So let's dive into that in the final part of our deep dive. What did Periyar actually propose as a path forward, and how relevant are his ideas in the context of modern India? Okay, so we've unpacked Periyar's critique of Brahmin opposition to reservation, but where does this leave us in terms of his vision for a more just and equitable India? I mean, did he just point out the problems, or did he actually offer solutions?
Oh, he offered solutions. He wasn't just a critic, he was a reformer at heart, you
Yeah.
know. And
Okay.
he believed in the power of education to really transform society. He founded schools and encouraged people from lower castes to really pursue education, arguing that, this is the key to breaking free from oppression.
So it wasn't just about access to jobs.
Right.
It was about empowering people to think for themselves and challenge the status quo.
Exactly. He saw education as a way to dismantle the very foundations of the caste system. He believed that through education, people could start to see through those myths and prejudices that upheld these hierarchies.
But how did he reconcile this focus on education with his advocacy for reservation? Weren't those seen as kind of contradictory by some?
It's interesting. Some people did see it as at odds,
Yeah.
but Periyar saw them as two sides of the same coin.
Okay.
He argued that reservation was necessary to create that level playing field,
Yeah.
that would allow everyone to truly benefit from education. So it wasn't about, handing out favors. It was about opening those doors to opportunity.
So creating a system where merit could truly flourish not just for the privileged few, but for everyone.
Yes, exactly. He believes so strongly that talent and potential exists across all communities,
Right.
but that those talents are often suppressed by systemic inequalities.
Yeah.
And he saw reservation as a way to unlock that potential and to unleash the collective brilliance of all of India's people.
Hmm. That's a powerful vision. But even decades after Periyar's time, these debates about reservation are still raging in India. What does that tell us about the lasting impact of these social divisions?
It tells us that his work is as relevant today as it was back then. His insights into the dynamics of power, privilege, and social hierarchies are just so insightful. And the arguments that he countered decades ago are still being used today, often in very similar ways.
Oh, wow.
For instance, the claim that reservation undermines merit and efficiency is still prevalent.
It's like those echoes we talked about earlier. The same anxieties and resistance to change keep resurfacing.
Exactly. But just as those arguments persist, so does the need to engage with Periyar's ideas and to continue the fight for social justice.
Yeah.
His work reminds us that achieving true equality requires constant vigilance, critical thinking, and a willingness to challenge the status quo.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Periyar's perspective on Brahmin opposition to reservation, I want to leave you with a few things to ponder. How can his insights inspire you to think critically about issues of power and privilege in your own life? How can we move beyond those simplistic arguments for and against reservation and engage in more nuanced conversations about social justice and equality? And how can we honor Perrier's legacy by continuing to fight for a world where everyone has the opportunity to reach their full potential regardless of their background or social standing?
Those are powerful questions, and I think they really speak to the heart of Perrier's message. He challenged us to be agents of change, not just passive observers. He reminded us that building a more just and equitable society requires constant vigilance and critical thinking, and a willingness to challenge the status quo. And that's a message that resonates deeply, not just in India, but around the world.
Thank you for taking this deep dive with us. We hope you found it insightful and thought-provoking. Until next time, keep seeking knowledge and challenging the world around you.